From mainstays in the powerlifting calendar to exciting new additions, we've been spoiled with some incredible meets this year. I'm going to be going through and grading the 6 biggest ones and picking which one I think was the very best. Thank you to Avancus for sponsoring these videos. I'm going to be giving away $50 gift codes, including one at the end of this video. Follow these instructions to go into the running to potentially win the next one. Okay, you guys know I love my criteria. I'm going to have 4 criteria I'm judging each one of these meets on. First one is prestige. How prestigious is the meet? What does the title mean? Performances. What performances did we see at the meet? You know, what crazy records were put up, crazy lifts were done. Battles. This is a big one. What head-to-head battles did we see? You guys know I'm a huge fan of seeing weight class clashes. And the final one is production. Now, I will say to me, this is the least important because as a hardcore powerlifting fan, I was used to watching meets that looked like they were filmed on a lemon and filmed or recorded underwater. So yeah, any stream that is somewhat serviceable, I'm okay with because I'm just that much of a fan of the sport. But I understand for more casual fans and for most people, it is very much important. So I'm curious to know what you guys think of that, and if production is important to you, and if it is, what you would like to see in that area. Okay, the first one is Sheffield. I'm going to go in chronological order. Now for prestige, this is a super easy one. It's an A+, right? Straight off the bat, don't have to think about it. Sheffield is the most prestigious title in powerlifting right now, period. Performances, what did we see? Well, in red, you'll see all the total world records that were broken on the men's side, and these were the final men standing. So obviously you had Shell annihilate the 6'6" world record with 770 in one of the crazy outlier performances of the year. Then you had Emil Krastev and Gustav Hedlund rounding out the podium, both going above the IPF world record and putting up the biggest 93 totals we'd ever seen at that point. Then Russ with the biggest 83 total of all time at that point in time. And Perk also with the biggest 74 total, even though he was far from his best, in 5th spot. And aside from that, we saw still crazy totals that weren't in that top 5. I mean, look at even Jesus there, 1112.5. Pana just short of 700. Waska 638. Ashton Ruska wasn't quite at his best. On the women's side, we saw Agatha Shitko obviously annihilate the 69 kilo world record again for the 2nd straight year, lifting the Sheffield Trophy. Kalem Togantea also set a world record in the 76s. And then you had Sunita, Meg Scanlon, Amanda Lawrence, and Evie Corrigan in places 3 to 6, coming just a few kilos short of beating the world records in their respective weight classes. And then some other super strong lifters putting up some pretty impressive performances all the way through down to the bottom. That was, Carlina setting the world record there. So performances-wise, I'm going to be grading Sheffield an A. Not quite the best performances necessarily if you go by quality and quantity, but definitely quite a few that were absolutely insane and right up there. Although we did see some bigger performances later in the year, I will say that. Okay, on to battles. So weight class battles at Sheffield. In the men's side, we had 83s was the main one. So Ade v Russ v Durins. I spoke about this in my Battles of the Year video, but this was the world champion against the world record holder against the divisional GOAT in Russ, seeking his revenge for taking that L last year. So that was a really big one that lived up to the hype. Then the 93s, you had Gustav v Emil, 2 of the best 93s in the world, and they proved it because they both went over the world record and they both put up the biggest 93 totals that we'd ever seen at that point and rounded out the Sheffield podium. A more underrated one, people forget that Shell didn't do his 770 uncontested. He had Kasim Sand, who was the reigning world champion in 66s, and Penna, 2-time world champ, one of the best 66ers to ever do it, also competing against him on that day. Didn't feel like as much of a clash as the other two, only because Shell was that much further ahead and that much of an outlier in the 66 class. And then in the women, the main one definitely was the 63s. You had Meg, the world champ, against Leah, moving back down to the 63s against the junior world champ, Albert Borstrom. And Meg ended up coming out on top in that one. And then the 84 pluses, of course, we all love to see this. Is everyone's favorite super heavyweight battle, Sunita v Brittany. We saw it several times this year. Sheffield was the first time, and I hope we keep seeing this several times every single year because it is awesome every single time. So for battles, I'm going to give it a B in terms of grading, which might sound a bit harsh, but again, this is sort of a relative scale, so you'll see which ones I rate above Sheffield when I look at some of the other meets coming up. But yeah, some great battles, not as many as some other meets though. Production wise, I'm going to give it an A. I think the production in Sheffield is pretty damn good. I like the aesthetic that they do. It's sort of a darker kind of theme. They have this year. They had the pink theme, which was something different. They had the cool screen graphics. So you could see everyone's attempts. You could see where they would move to if they were successful. So yeah, I quite like the Sheffield production. Okay, the next big meet that we had chronologically was Powerlifting American Nationals, PA Nats. And prestige wise, this is a B. Definitely not up there with Sheffield, but it is up there because it is sort of the first step on the way to getting towards Sheffield, right? For a lot of lifters, because for most people, you have to go to Nats and win Nats to be able to go to Worlds to then be able to go to Sheffield, right? So yeah, for that, he gets a B. Performances wise, we saw some insane performances. Now, we're not going through every weight class because there were a few dud. Well, dud is a bit of a harsh word, but there are a few weight classes where the best lifters were not there. And so we didn't care too much. Like the 74s, Will New Perk was getting the Team USA spot. So respect to Zach DiConstanzo, but his 740 total wasn't getting anywhere near Perk. But crazy performances in the 66s, 83s, 93s, 105s, and in the 120s. We saw, and particularly in those three weight classes highlighted in red, those were the biggest totals we'd ever seen. Those were all-time world records in those classes, and some of them quite a bit. Joe Borency's 900, I called that the performance of the year in my previous video, smashed the world record unofficially. Anthony McNaughton's 979 also was way above what any 105 had ever done, and Jonathan Kaiko's 919.5 beat Emil's total from Sheffield. And then Rondell Hunt was there, 1010, which by his standards isn't the best, but by any other 120 lifter standards in the world was still like, at that point, 30 plus kilos ahead of what anyone had ever done historically. So yeah, pretty crazy performance there with those weight classes. Then for the women, you had Meg Scanlon, who was the only one who set an all-time world record with 566, although still some noteworthy performances that were absolutely elite in those weight classes there that clinched their world spot. You know, Heather Connor, Celine Crum in the battle there, Cranen, Amanda Lawrence, who also pushed towards a world record but couldn't quite get there. So yeah, performances-wise at PA Nats, I'm going to go with an A. This might sound weird why I'm grading it the same as Sheffield when it comes to performances, and we saw so many world records at Sheffield. Just the absurdity of the men's performances makes me put it up here. I mean, Joe B's 900, Anthony McNaughton's 979, Jonathan Kaiko's 919.5, the fact that Rondell was there, Avery Jackson put up like the third biggest 66 total ever as well, Meg Scanlon with the biggest 63 total of all time. Yeah, I'm giving it equal to Sheffield here with an A. Battles wise, this was insane. In one of my previous videos, we looked at the best battles of the year. There were several featured from PA Nats, most notably the 93s. This was a crazy, I don't even know, 7-8 way battle between quite a few lifters. The main ones that I highlighted were those top five. So Joe B, Taylor Atwood, Delaney Wallace, Sean Noriega, and Angelo Fortino. But there were also quite a few very strong lifters who were well and truly above 800 below them, which 800 plus is still an absolute elite total in the 83s, even though it doesn't feel like it as much anymore nowadays. 93s, similar story to the 83s. You had an absolutely stacked 7-8 way battle. Again, I focused only on the top five when I looked at it in my battles video, but you still had a few lifters below that who were in, mid-high 800s. So yeah, these two alone is worthy of, PNS being the best meet when it comes to head-to-head battles this year. You also had the 66s, where it was a heated 4-way battle, where Avery Jackson pulled off the upset against Jonathan Garcia and Austin Nikolai, a very hyped junior, as well as Morgan Garcia, another vet of the game. In the 105s, this one wasn't as much of a head-to-head because Keenan lifted in the morning session. Anthony Norton smashed his total later on in prime time, but still technically counts. Then amongst the women, without a doubt, the premier battle was the 69. Celine Crum, Gaby Martinez, Jackie Malater, and they were all just within 16 kilos of each other at the end, and it came down to the final round of deadlifts, and Celine Crum came out on top. So yeah, battles-wise, A+. PA Nats had the best battles of the year. Even if you just take the 83s and 93s on the men's side, that is reason enough for it to have an A+ in this category. Production-wise, I'm giving it a B+. It was, to me, not as cool as Sheffield in terms of the visuals. It still had like lifter forecasts and, lifters where they were going to end up and what their totals were, what their attempts were and all that. As far as visually, it was more of a lighted up setting, had the Powerlifting America backdrop. Yeah, I had no complaints about it, but yeah, not as cool as Sheffield for me. On to IPF Worlds, held in Germany this year, and prestige-wise, this is an A. If it weren't for Sheffield, this would be the most prestigious title to win, a world title. Everyone knows what a world champion is. You can go up to anyone, they can know nothing about powerlifting. You can say you're a world champion, and they will know exactly what that means and respect you all the same for it. But Sheffield has just added that extra level to the sport, so IPF Worlds is an A for me. Performances, these were the men's world champions, and we had Joey B and Anthony McNaughton were the ones who set IPF world records, although there were still a few who were quite close. I mean, Perk came within half a kilo of his world record that he set at Sheffield on 5 attempts. Emil Krastev was, just a few more degrees of knee extension away from matching his world record at Sheffield. And then Etienne was, Etienne and Jesus were a bit below the world records in their weight classes there. Shell put up 740s, which is quite a bit below 770. Ivan surprisingly put up 95% of the world record, which no one was expecting to qualify for next year's Sheffield. So we still saw a few performances on the men's side that were very much up there with world records. But the highlights definitely were the women's side when it comes to world record performances. You had Heather Connor in the 47s, Sarah Naldi in the 57s, Alba Borstrom in the 63s, and Brittany Schlater in the 84 pluses, all walking away with the biggest totals of all time in their respective weight classes. So in half the women's weight classes, we saw the biggest totals ever and world records. And then in other ones, it was pretty damn close. Like Evie Corrigan's 480 was a kilo below her world record, I think. Agatha Shitko's 69 kilo performance was 15-ish kilos below her 69 world record, but she weighed in at just above 63. So you could almost count that as even 50 kilos more than Alba's biggest 63 total. Carlina wasn't far off her world record in the 76s, and Amanda Lawrence was about 15 or 20 kilos off her best 84 total. So the women absolutely smashed it in terms of breaking the world records in their classes, and that had a lot to do with the battles they were in, which I'll cover in a second. But because of that, I'm giving IPF Worlds an A+. The reason I put it above Sheffield is because if you look at all the weight classes, we saw the insane performances. Like Joey B's Worlds performance wasn't far off what he did at PNATs, right? And yes, what he did at PNATs is more impressive because it was the 900 milestone the first time, he'd been around that. But the fact that he did 890 at Worlds is right up there too. Plus, Anthony McNaughton's total was only a few kilos less than his PNATs win to smash the world record and obliterate it. And then Perk's performance was crazy. Shell's 66 performance was still the most we'd seen on an international stage apart from Sheffield by heaps. And then on the women's side, Brittany Schlater, biggest total ever. Agatha's crazy 63 point something kilo performance and all those other world records I mentioned. To me, the quantity of the world's performances just makes it an A+. Battles-wise, we saw some crazy battles, even on the men's side. 120s, I spoke about this in my battles video, so I won't go too far deep into it, but it was a 5-way fight that went right down to the very end. 93s we knew was going to be crazy coming in, and Christian Indoku made a surprise run for the podium at the very end. But between Kaiko and the two Europeans in Emil and Gustav, we knew it was going to be super close, and it was. Then you had the 83s, so Joe B against Jurins and Ade and Enna. And then the 105s as well was pretty cool, even though Anthony Norton had quite the spread in the end. It was quite a heated battle for podium, even between Anatoly and Corentin Clement, who ended up bombing out. That was still, very much in contention coming in. But the women's side, similar to the performances, had the highlights, and this is why they had to push for world records, because they were in such close battles. They couldn't afford to win, leaving kilos in the tank. In the 63s, you had Alba v. Chiara v. Meg Scanlon. In the 57s, you had Sarah Naldi, Jade, and Joy Namani. 84 pluses, again, you had Brittany plus Sunita, the rematch there. 47s, Heather Connor v. Tiff. 52s, the two New Zealand ladies, Evie Corrigan and Megan Lee Smith. And the 76s as well, Carlina, Cranen, and Laura. So pretty much all the weight classes, bar the 69s and 84s, was very closely contested on the women's side, and oftentimes came down to the very last deadlift. So absolutely insane battles-wise. And for that, I'm going to give it an A. Again, I'm putting PNATs above at an A+, just because of the absurdity of that 83 and 93 kilo men's flight, which were two of the best battles in powerlifting period, I'm going to say. So that's why Worlds is a bit lower, but yeah, above Sheffield for sure, and just that one tier below PNATs for me. Production-wise, A plus. Now, this is super subjective. I just really like the way that IPF World streams look. I like the aesthetic of it. I like the fact that it looks like an Olympic stage. The fact that it's streamed on the Olympic channel, right? They have cool overlays, right? You can see the totals that lifters are fighting towards. You can see their attempts. They show cool replays. You can see the white lights. Just the aesthetic of it as well. Maybe it's because it's, what I'm used to, because IPF Worlds is the stream that I've been watching, I guess, the longest when it comes to powerlifting. I know some people don't like it. They say it's sterile, it's boring. I don't think that's the case at all. I quite like it. But yeah, to me, that's my favorite production. On to the World Games. This is the one that was the new edition, the first year that the World Games was going raw, and no one really knew what to expect here. Prestige-wise, interesting, because initially I was expecting, when I first heard World Games was going to be raw, I thought this was going to be like our version of the Olympics, right? I thought this was going to be above a world championship. It's going to be like on par with Sheffield, maybe even above Sheffield. In the end, because of all the lifters that ended up dropping out, and the fact that, even though it was cool, I don't know, it just kind of didn't really hit the way people thought it would hit. And I think a large part of that is because a lot of people ended up pulling out, right? Which was unfortunate. And the more people pulled out, the less prestigious it became. And because it's the first one, because this year was the sort of precedent we were setting, it's unfortunate now that the precedent we set is, well, 80% of the best lifters in the world didn't bother showing up, right? But World Games is a multi-sport thing. So World Games gold medal, you could make the case, is the most prestigious thing you can win, right? But because of how it was treated in the powerlifting community, I'm going to give it a B+. It's not the same as a world championship medal. Definitely not the same as Sheffield. I can't just rank it equal with PA Nats though. That wouldn't feel right, given that's just a domestic championship. So I'm going to give it a B+. Performances-wise, these were the champions on the men's side. Joe Jordan, Jurins Kinganu, Anatoly, and Timo winning. You can see the totals there was based on GL points, and they grouped 2 weight classes together per each weight category. Jurins ended up winning best lifter, and there actually weren't any world records set on the men's side, although, that was in large part due to no American lifters competing apart from Jonathan Garcia, and not a lot of the best lifters in the world being there. On the women's side, more of the best lifters in the world were there, and we did actually see a few world records, or a few close to world records. So Tiff totaled 450, which was the biggest 47 total ever, except she weighed in slightly above 47 to win the lightweight category. Taking silver in the lightweight category, Megan Lee Smith actually officially broke the IPF world record in the 52s and got her revenge against Evie Corrigan, finally beating her. Then in the middleweight category, Albert Borstrom won gold, matching her IPF world record in the 63s, but Sarah Nolity, similar to Tiff, added 10 kilos to her 57 kilo world record unofficially because she weighed in slightly above 57. And then Kalina Tongatea set the world record on her way to winning the heavyweight category officially, because she was a 76. So performances-wise, I'm going to give it a B. Definitely a tier below the 3 that I looked at previously. We definitely saw the better performances on the women's side, just because more of the top women's lifters actually bothered to show up. We didn't quite see as many on the men's side. I mean, Joe Jordan's performance was up there with one of the best 66 totals ever. I think like equal third or something at the point. Jurins' performance was up there as, he overtook Ross on the 83 standings, becoming the third strongest 83 ever at that point in time. So that was up there. And mainly the women, though, sort of carried them performances-wise. Battles, interesting because this was scored on GL points and they grouped weight classes together, so it created a bit of interesting dynamics there. But 66s is where we saw the best head-to-head battle on the men's side, I think. So Joe Jordan against Kyoto Ishiyama. Clifton Furr actually made a surprise podium with a huge grinder of a deadlift. And Jonathan Garcia, somewhat of a disappointing day. Santos Jimenez also in the mix. 59s, again in italics there, because Ivan and Kasim San both weighed in slightly above 59. Antoine Garcia didn't, but they were sort of going against one another, even though they weren't in contention for the lightweight win, because their GL points were a bit lower. In the 105s, Anatoly and Emil Norling went head-to-head again, which is always cool to see the rivalry between them. And Krishna Ndokun, who typically is a 93, actually weighed in heavier than Anatoly, because Anatoly weighed in pretty light. So he was, I guess, in that battle. In the 120s, this was kind of cool. Etienne waiting slightly over. We had Nico Perol, Taras Melanichuk, Lucas Wiseman, who were all sort of fighting for the podium in the super heavyweight category. And the orders are a bit weird there because, yeah, Nico Perol actually ended up finishing in silver ahead of Taras Melanichuk or bronze actually, sorry. Even though his total was lower because of his lower body weight, which is sort of the issue with GL points scoring like this. But anyway, on the women's side in the 52s, you had Megan Lee Smith versus Evie Corrigan. This was a really cool one because this is where we saw that passing of the torch moment, right? It's not often when a lifter who's been so dominant in a weight class decides to move out of the weight class. It's not often we actually get the passing of the torch moment. Actually, most of the time in powerlifting, we don't. If you look at all the times historically, like Taylor Atwood used to be a 74 king, now it's Perk. Did they ever clash in that crossover point? No. Same thing with Ray Williams and Jesus, same thing with Joby and Russ, right? This one was good because we actually saw that moment. This was the passing of the torch between Evie Corrigan and Megan Lee Smith. I'm pretty sure Evie's now moving up to 57s, and Megan Lee Smith beat her head-to-head and took her world record, and has since unofficially added more kilos to it in the meets that she's done, weighing in slightly above 52 after this. 57s, we had Sarah Naldi, Joy Namani, who weighed in around 60 kilos, so she had 57 to 63, sort of halfway in between. Jade was there, Bobby Butters, and some Fagatra Powell. Then in the 84 pluses, again, we saw Brittany Schlane and Selena Mulu. I will never get sick of seeing this. It was a bit weird because Brittany won, even though she got out-totaled, but again, that's how the scoring sort of worked. And then 69s as well, Carola Gara, Marta Cheno, Gabby Martinez, and Annie Nelson were in the mix there too. So overall, I'm going to give it a B-. I think there were some cool head-to-head clashes weight class-wise. It's just the way that it was scored didn't really highlight those as much. And especially with how the production was in terms of being able to follow the scoring, made it even harder, which I'll touch on in a second. So yeah, I'm going to give it a B- for that reason. And production-wise, again, this was a mixed one because there were aspects of this that I absolutely loved, and there were aspects of this that really weren't that good, right? The aspects that I loved is just the visuals look super clean. Again, similar to almost Worlds in a way. Like the bright blue looked very professional. It felt like I was watching the Olympics in terms of quality and visuals. The other thing that I loved was the fact that they followed lifters backstage. So there's a screen grab of a shot there, but that shot continued with them following Timo backstage and having a discussion with his coaches. Then you could see Etienne in the warm-up room. That's something we haven't seen before, and that's something that I really would like to see more of, that sort of backstage following the lifters, or when they come out onto the platform, walking out with them with the camera. Like, that was really cool. And yeah, I haven't seen that anywhere else. But the parts of it that weren't so good was they had like no overlays on the screen in terms of what the standings were like. The commentators weren't of the best use either when it came to that. They weren't really cluing us in on what standings were what. Personally, I didn't mind too much just because I was following along the lifting cast. Plus, I knew like roughly what the lifters were lifting, so I was able to follow along in my head. But I can understand for casual lifters, that would have been, or more casual viewers, that would have been very annoying not being able to follow at all what was happening, especially because it was on GL points, not even totals. So if you didn't know the lifter's body weight, which they never showed us, by the way, you would have no idea what the standings were like. So for that reason, yeah, the good and the bad kind of balance out to be a B there. Although if they had got more of that, results tracking, screen overlays aspect, this would have been an A+ for me as well. Okay, Avancus Houston is next up. And prestige-wise, this is definitely a C at the bottom one, purely because it's the first time we've seen it, right? We don't really know where this meet stands next to the others. It's the first year that it's been run. They had some really cool trophies. They had some cool lifters show up. And yeah, it's going to continue next year, bigger and better. So I'm expecting good things. And prestige-wise is definitely going to grow. But as of right now, it was the least prestigious of the year. Performances wise, we saw Perk and Joe B were definitely the highlight. They took out number 1 and number 2 for not only the biggest GL points of this meet, but the 2 biggest GL points ever in raw tested male powerlifting. So the fact that we saw the two best pound for pound performances, if you go by formulas, in the one meet was pretty damn crazy. Aside from that, you also had Angelo Fortino hitting an 860, which went very underrated. Ade hitting 865, weighing in as slightly above 83. hence the lower gel points over Angelo Fortino, but still PB'd his total. Demetrius Smith entering into the 900s, Jamar Royster in the high 8s, Nonso Chinye putting up the second biggest 120 total we'd ever seen at that point, with the biggest deadlift ever as well. Chase Graver, Oscar Carpio, and Sean Mills rounding out the 10 male lifters. And then women, we had Meg Scanlon was definitely in the highlight, 573.5, taking the American 69 kilo record, weighing in as a light 69. We also had Leanne Lee putting up the third biggest 47 total ever, behind only Tiff and Heather Connor. Actually, Jess Espinal, so fourth biggest ever, just remembered. Janae Kovacs also broke the American record coming in and would have left with it if it weren't for Meg Scanlon. What I will say, they combined the male and female scoring, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. We're not really used to doing that, and I think formulas are complicated enough as it is. Having to combine it across genders sort of doesn't help. So I prefer keeping those separate. But the top three standings overall were Perk, Joby, and Meg, making the top three. So it was actually kind of cool that Meg got in the top three overall. Performances wise, I'm going with the B. Because quality, quantity, I mean, we definitely had the quality. We had Perk, Joy B. It just wasn't that much of those crazy performances and lifts as some of the other meets. Even though, still, I mean, like I said, Nonso Chinye hit the heaviest deadlift ever, right? Demetrius Smith he got the final deadlift off the ground that would have given him the heaviest 93 total ever. So there were some awesome performances there, just not quite as many as some of the other ones. Battles wise, the 83 battle in the men's was the most hyped coming in, mainly because of Joey B and Ade. Now, Ade didn't end up having his best day, so he didn't end up being quite as hyped in the end. But Ange Fortino also hitting 860 was pretty cool to see. Then in the 93s, Demetrius Smith 900 and Jamar Royster high 800s, squatting 800 pounds, becoming the lightest person ever to do it. Another epic lift that we saw. Two elite American 93s upping their totals in the most stacked weight class there is in the sport nowadays. In the 69s, Meg v. Janae, where Meg ended up winning by a couple kilos, was the main battle there. So C for battles. Again, compared to the rest, this is easily had the least out of all of them. Production wise, I think Avancus did a great job with this. I think, the simple black visuals, black, white, the spotters wearing white, the lifters wearing black, the contrast there, how clean the stage looked. I think that was really cool. And they did a pretty good job with the overlays too. They had the forecast up pretty well. You had the lifters' attempts on the bottom. They had like stats for the lifters that were walking out as well, which was pretty cool. So I quite like this one. I'm going to give it a B+. Only not an A, just because I prefer Sheffield visuals and I prefer IPF Worlds visuals, more of a subjective thing. But I think they did a pretty damn good job with it. My final one I'm covering is SBD Austin. So prestige-wise, this is a B-. It's above Avancus because we've sort of seen this before. It's, I believe, the second year, because last year we had SBD Rally, which introduced that concept of Sheffield, but with American records. That's where Joe B first hit his 865 and set the biggest 83 total ever. So we sort of know what it is, and it's more, it's not the first time we've seen it. I wouldn't quite put it on par with PA Nats though, given that that's a national title, that's a pathway to Worlds that has to still rank higher. SBD Austin is almost like for the people that lost at Nats, right? Which I know it sounds harsh because they're literally amongst the best lifters in the world, but oftentimes that's who you'll see at SBD Austin is American lifters who didn't quite make it through Nats and didn't quite make it to Worlds. So that's why it's a B- in terms of prestigeness for me. Performances, we saw some crazy performances here. So Bob Matthews won with 10:10.5, but Jesus Olivares stole the show for many people, breaking his world record unofficially, but putting up the biggest raw total ever, 1153.5, a kilo more than we did at Sheffield 2 years prior. Absolutely crazy. That was the only total that was a record. Bob Matthews' 10:10.5 was the biggest 120 total this year, but not bigger than Rondell's all-time total. Joe Jordan put up the second biggest 66 total ever. Ashton Ruska put up his biggest total we'd seen in a few years. Jaden Lowe became the third strongest 83 lifter of all time. behind only Taylor and Joey B, which was awesome to see. Delaney Wallace's 93 kilo debut. Michael Davis coming back stronger than we'd seen him in a while. Then you had some lifters like Victor Rodriguez, Josh Hall, who haven't seen much of before, but putting up pretty huge lifts and especially huge deadlifts. Which is the other thing I'll say is we might not have seen as many total records here, but we saw a lot of individual lift records that were epic. We saw huge squats by Ash, Bob, Jesus. We saw massive deadlifts. Like, this was arguably the greatest deadlift flight that I'd ever seen, right? We had, I don't even know where to start with this. We had Michael Davis come out, Victor Rodriguez, Josh Hall, I think Ashton Ruscott took the American 105 record, then Josh Hall took it. Victor Rodriguez and Bob Matthews, the 120 deadlift record, bounced back and forth between them. Then Jesus hit 410 and attempted 430 and came super close. Jaden Lowe broke Joe B's deadlift record. There were just so many crazy lifts we saw here. So yeah, seeing the totals come doesn't even do it justice. On the women's side as well was pretty cool. We had Meg Scanlon again going back to back, adding some more kilos to what she did at Avancus against some very strong 69 kilo women in Jackie Malater and Gabby Martinez as well. We saw Natalie Richards' return to the platform in the best shape we've seen her in and coming within 10 kilos off her best total. Christian Hazard making Powerlifting America debut. So yeah, Jessica Bidner also in a few kilos of her best ever total. So not as epic as the men's side, but still very good performances. So I'm going to give it a B+. I think I'm putting it above World Games. I'm putting it above Avancus, but I'm still not putting it on the level of PNATS, Sheffield, or Worlds. I think those for me definitely had the better performances, both in terms of quantity, not just quality. But yeah, SBD Austin is a B+ for me, performances-wise. Battles 83s, we had Jaden Logan and Sean Noriega, which was very exciting coming in. Unfortunately, Sean didn't quite end up being in his best shape and lost about 25 kilos off his total, but Jaden Lowe had an amazing day and put the third biggest 83 total together that we've ever seen. In the 66s, you had Joe Jordan and Jonathan Garcia, which again kind of didn't live up to it, only because Jonathan Garcia weighed in heavy, so he didn't actually weigh in at 66, and that sort of took him out of the running immediately. But even total-wise, Joe Jordan ended up running away with it anyway. On the women's side, you had the Battle of the 69s was the main one between Meg, Jackie, and Gabby Martinez. You can see, from PNATS a few months ago how much those totals have leveled up in the 69 kilo class. And the 52s were all very close, however, not quite as close to sort of what the world record or world's level is for podium. So I'm going to give it a C. Similar to Avancus, we didn't quite see the best head-to-head battles. It was more of a highlight of performances when it came to those two meets. Production-wise, I'm going to go B-. I think production-wise, they probably could have done a slightly better job. I still had fun watching it, and like I said, production to me doesn't mean as much as other things like performances and battles do. So it was still crazy hype. It was still really good. Commentary was great with Russ and obviously Ryan there. But yeah, overlays were good, but in terms of backdrop and just visuals, the exit sign I thought was pretty funny. The fact that he set up backdrop right in front of the exit sign, and you could just constantly see the exit sign. That was, yeah, I had to chuckle to myself every time I saw that. And then like the hexagon thing was, I think they used that last year for SBD Rally too. So production-wise, this was definitely the most underwhelming, I would say. Although the performances more than made up for it, and yeah, the screen overlays and stuff and the standings were all good too. But there is my summary of what I rated each meet in terms of those 4 big categories that I care most about. You'll probably realize now which one I'm going to give as the winner based on the ratings that I gave there, and it is no surprise, it is IPF Worlds. I wasn't necessarily expecting that, to be honest. When I was going about this, I tried to put these ratings together as objectively as possible and then just let the data drive what the winner would be, rather than just go off what I felt. Initially, I felt like I was either going to give this to PNATS or Sheffield, maybe even SBD Austin, but IPF Worlds ends up taking it. And if I look across the categories, I can't really disagree with it. I think IPF Worlds is just always the most hype of. Sheffield is kind of the most hype, but in terms of just sheer quantity and quality of performances, it has to be Worlds, because you're always going to see, like, almost every weight class nowadays has crazy head-to-head battles, right? And it's only going to continue as lifters continue to level up and join the sport. So Worlds is just only getting better. It's the best it's ever been. And for me, IPF Worlds was the meet of the year. Okay, it is giveaway time for the second last time this Liftmas. The winner of the next $50 Avancus gift code is Drake. Oh no, Drake Foes. I promised if you win, I would sing it. Oh man, I might have to edit this out and give it the winner to someone else. On the 10th day of Liftmas, Presser gave to me best performance of the year. There you go. God damn it, I can't believe you actually won. But yeah, send me an email to presserpowerlifting@gmail.com and hope you enjoyed my singing. Everyone else, make sure you comment on this one to go into the running to win the 12th and final gift code I'll be giving away in my last Liftmas video coming up soon.